generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet. Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the latest trio of episodes that are available from Andor. We got to this a little late, but better late than never. So we're here to talk about episodes 7 through 9 of Andor Season 2. And then, of course, we will have the finale set of 3 episodes drop tonight. So we're going to go ahead, give our thoughts on it, go through a small little rundown of spoilers, and then be excited, like all of you, to watch the rest of it as it unfolds. So let's see. This, arguably, in my humble opinion, I think this is probably the best arc that Andor's show in general has had. The even with season one, there was a lot of sets of threes, right? Where we kind of have that setup. There's a middle piece and then an ending to each of those. Um, I do think this is the one that really sets things in motion as we head towards the finale and as, we head towards Rogue One. Um, I think in the first episode, not a whole lot truly happened. And I thought that was kind of the weak part of this trio was that first episode. What we gather is that Cassian and Bix, they are now living on the planet Yavin. If you're not aware of what that is, that's where the rebel base is located. This is also the same area where in the very first arc of this season, when Andor was messing around with that group of people and they kept doing the weird rock, paper, scissors thing. This is that same place. So I guess this is that small connection to those weirdos in the beginning of the season.
I thought that looked familiar, Jungle.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why we know this is because at the end of the third arc, when the camera like pans upward, we see the rebel base. So that's how we know that's where he's at. So they're now living right on the outskirts of the base. It seems like Cassian is very much a part of the rebellion at this point. Remember where we left last week? Bix killed the torture dude from the Empire, and then they fled. So this is now a year later from that moment, and they are now living together on Yavin. Uh, any thoughts on what's going on there?
Uh, this episode was fairly weak for me. It it seemed almost like a filler episode of like, what are our characters up to now? And just not a whole lot of actually doing anything. Which is sad to say because I feel like we've done this before multiple times. And I don't understand. Am I asking for too much here to have more action in the show?
Well, I think with the way that the show is structured this time around, I almost wonder if that's kind of the formula they went with. Where are they at now in episode one? The drama in episode two, and how can we wrap up this arc and basically send ourselves into the next section with the third episode? And that does follow suit here. Honestly, there's something in episode one or episode seven technically, but episode one of what we got this week that I think is a bit more distracting than even that. And that is the Force user. I really didn't care for this in the show. They haven't needed a Force sensitive person, to carry this show for the big fans. And honestly, this definitely wasn't enough of a Force user to arguably pull more people into the show. And so I just thought it was kind of weak. Um, Maybe this might be a stretch, but maybe it's kind of a way for Cassian to believe in a bigger power. Because I know we see in Rogue One, the blind guy that is a Jedi. I don't remember if he's a master or a knight or what, but he's definitely got a connection to the Force, and maybe this is what we see that Cassian has encountered that makes him believe more about what's going on with that character in Rogue One. I don't know, but overall, I thought it was kind of out of place, and again, that kind of like how you said this felt more like a filler episode of where are we at. It just felt like another thing that was tacked on there to be that filler of a first episode. Um,
Well, the lady, or the healer lady, force user, whatever you want to call them, because they were calling them a healer too. We know them as being a force user. Was telling Bix about how he needs somebody to like be his vessel to or nest or however you want to call it, and that that person's probably Bix and like feeding her all this inspiration. And spoiler alert to jumping to the end, Bix leaves him. So like it completely nullifies anything that this lady says and makes it pointless.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't really care for that part of the story, so there is something in this first episode that is, worthwhile to the overall plot, and that's just that what is happening on Gorman is progressing towards this big moment that's going to happen. Dedra is the one in charge. She's the one that, is going to be responsible for all this stuff. And she's very much an enforcer of whatever the Empire tells her, as opposed to thinking about what they tell her and then trying to rationalize whether what she's doing is right or wrong. And so we really see, and I think this kind of bleeds into episode two a little bit. We really see between her and Cyril, that struggle in the mindset. It's to me, it kind of echoed what happened with Anakin and Padme at the end of episode three, where he's saying to her, "We're gonna have all these amazing things," which is what Dedra did, and then Cyril changed his mind and left her at the altar essentially. And so I don't know. We did again, my favorite part of the show is the Cyril and Dedra moments because honestly, Dedra is my favorite character in this show. Um,
I feel like that's a good analogy comparing them to Anakin and Padme because she's not completely evil the way that Anakin didn't start out completely evil. You know, she is just wanting a better life, and this is the way that she sees to make it happen. And it's she's kind of getting more and more used to doing these evil type things. She's almost becoming numb to it. But she, earlier in the season didn't really want to be a part of these things and was kind of forced into it. And now she's just in too deep.
yeah, she kind of sees it as I gotta do what I gotta do, and once I'm done with this, we will, live in fortunes, basically. And Cyril is not going to have any of that. I do think it was interesting, and I'm pretty sure it was the first time we saw this, but we saw them kiss in this arc, which was pretty interesting. It was definitely an awkward looking kiss, but I think that's truly what they went for, from an acting point of view. We even remember from Star Wars Celebration that the actor and actress that portray Cyril and Dedra, that they basically said that the relationship is very icky. It's not a relationship that you really want to watch unravel on screen because they just think it's so awkward and weird. But I think that's part of what gravitates me to it is just that it's so odd and it's like, well, what's going to happen next? Like, I didn't expect in the last three episodes where she was like, turn the lights down low, baby, give him a little Josh Turner moment there. But um, yeah, it's interesting to see what happens with these characters. I say, was there anything else from episode one that you wanted to touch on?
I didn't, I'm sorry, I'm gonna sneeze.
Or episode seven, I should say. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. Ooh, okay.
See, if you had a mic like me, I wouldn't have picked that up. We'll have to
I
get
would
you one.
say there wasn't really what?
I said we'll have to get you one.
Okay. I would say there wasn't really anything from episode 7 that was too memorable. The Force Healer is probably a good thing just to touch on, and I feel like so much of this just bleeds into episode 2 or 8, if you will, 2 of the little series, 8 of the season. But like everything that's happening in Gorman, you can kind of wrap up into the second episode that we watched of this set.
Yeah, so this second episode is where things hit the fan. Like, this is arguably the best episode of Andor ever. And what's happening here is, there was this explosion that happened close to the center of town, and the news outlets are, kind of talking it up quite a bit, very much blowing smoke in the Empire's favor. They're, talking about this protest that might be coming up and that it might be violent. We don't know, and they're just really stirring the pot of the propaganda that's going on. And so the Empire decides to capitalize on what's happening. The Empire basically brings in these barricades, and it looks like they're just trying to, put a little section of the plaza blocked off. But as we hear from Cassian, no, they're building a fortress. So they're building something with the intent of violence that is going to unravel. And so they do build this huge little fortress in the middle of that plaza. And what eventually happens is that the townspeople gather up. They do come to this area, and to get the ball rolling, the Empire actually shoots their own troop, and they play it as the citizens open fire first, which is kind of weird because to me, when we see this guy get shot, we definitely see him like fall on an angle as opposed to like being pushed back or pushed to the side. The angle of the shot I felt was very prominent with the way that, he fell to the ground, and there's no citizens up on the higher levels. There's just the Imperials with the snipers. So I thought that was a little different, but maybe just because of the shock of what's happening and how quickly everything unfolded, maybe the Empire used that to their advantage.
Well, even if like say one or two people saw who it really was, there was so much chaos already between everybody chanting and singing and, trying to push on the barricades that I don't think that in all that chaos, even if somebody did see who it was, that they wouldn't have been, I don't think they would have been able to effectively communicate, like, wait a minute, this is them, setting us up. And there were already people talking about how it was a setup. There were, people trying to warn their family members of, this is not good. You should be away from here. This is not what we want. And they just didn't want to be silenced. So they said, screw it, we're going here anyway.
Right. And Cassian is here on Gorman. Cassian's mission is to take out Dedra. We saw, I don't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2, but we see him, I think, look at a data pad, and we see her mugshot on there. Well,
Oh,
more
that's
of
right.
a
That was a part of episode 1, or 7, if you will, because he got to his hotel room in Gorman and he was looking at her or her window through a scope, and that's when he realized there was stormtroopers on his roof. And that's about where the episode cut off, I believe.
yeah. Um, so yeah, he's there to take out Dedra. There's a handful of times that it seemed like he had the opportunity to do it, but he never actually took the shot. Um, we do see Cyril approach Dedra. He basically goes through the crowd and uh, gets his way eventually as he gets cleared through multiple checkpoints. He eventually gets up to Dedra, and this is where we have that kind of Anakin Padme moment of, Dedra telling him that they're gonna have the best life. They're gonna have all these riches. And he's like, "What did you do? Like, what is going on? How long did you know?" And remember, she's under this like order to not tell him anything. And so she's abiding by that. And so that makes Cyril get very violent. He first grabs her by the shoulders to try to tell her he means business. And she even says, "You're hurting me." And he doesn't care. And because she isn't, telling him fast enough, he eventually grabs her by the throat and is choking her. And so I would argue that she was starting to actually feel legitimate fear for one of the first times in her life as an Imperial officer. Um, so she does eventually tell him what's going on, which
Well,
leads
that
to
just was so out of character for him too. Like she never would have expected that out of him, I think.
right, because he's been so reserved this entire time, and arguably she's been the one that's called a lot of the shots in their relationship. But I would also argue that, even from season one, where Cyril gets belittled by his mom every morning while he eats his trick cereal, um, he he's got to be building up some sort of anger, and he's got to be thinking different thoughts in his head that even though he's being polite in the moment, he's got to have emotions and feelings of what he truly wants to say back to some of these people. Or, like when you remember your conversations much later in the day and you're like, darn, I wish I would have said this. I think he has probably a lot of those moments. And this is where we saw him flip the switch and actually start saying those things, which eventually leads to him dumping Dedra.
Yeah, so he storms out of there and she's trying to have the troopers track him down or keep him there because at this point he knows the truth and she doesn't want him spreading anything and it's just kind of too late because he's in the midst of the crowd. And right around this time is when that sniper hits one of the other troop members because I thought that they were trying to find him to take him out so he didn't say anything. But that's not the case.
Yeah, he was like standing in the middle of the entire plaza, like the one person standing straight up. It's like if they wanted to hit him, they could have.
Yeah. But to be fair, he's wearing, I think, a brown coat, and so is pretty much everybody else. So not very standout kind of outfit.
Another pretty significant part of this is, Cassian has been aiming his weapon at Dedra multiple times, and us as the viewer is like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? And there's this time where he's right about to do it, and he gets hit and tackled by Cyril. So it almost seems like Cyril, even though he has strong feelings against what Dedra is doing, he still kind of cares about her. So he took it upon himself to wrestle around with Cassian a bit, which was a pretty good sequence, I would say. They're eventually separated by a grenade that goes off nearby. And right when Cyril is about to gun down Cassian gets saved. I don't know the guy's name, but he's a big part of this. He's one of the townspeople. Um, he pops Cyril, and Cyril is killed. I'm pretty sure he got shot in the head. So I
Yeah,
think
so
it's
he's done.
nighty night, and his chapter is over. Um, I am happy to see that Dedra did make it, just because I really didn't want to lose both of these characters at this time. Um, But we do, as the episode comes closer and closer to the end, we do hear the news stations come back on the air and there's talking about, how this was a mess. It was basically a bloodbath. There's hundreds of people dead and it's a massacre. And so, uh, this news about what happened on um, Gorman is definitely gonna make its way around the galaxy, which also, I mean, that was part of the chanting earlier on in the episode. They were saying something like the galaxy is watching. Um, there's another piece to it. Something, something, something. The galaxy is watching.
Yeah, I don't remember the other half of the chant because they started singing in their own language after that.
Yeah.
But there were two other things about this episode that I think we should touch on. One kind of more minor and one that I think was more exciting. I'm gonna start with the more minor one being Wilman, who I don't know his exact relationship. I thought he was like Bix's brother, but maybe it's just like her friend who's like a brother, who's not actually her brother. But he's here with Cassian too. They were supposed to, I think, take out Dedra together, but they're separated in the crowd, and they do meet up later, but he wants to go save another girl in trouble. He's got a real heart for those damsel in distresses.
Well, also he was getting down with one of them too in the base, so
Well,
because we
that's what I'm
see,
saying is he's going to try to save her because they got separated.
yeah, we saw them wake up in the same bed, so we know what happened.
And the other more exciting thing that I got from this episode was the K2 units. They're finally here. I have been waiting for this since season 1, episode 1. It is about time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, yeah, we saw the K2 droids in Rogue One, but we've also seen them quite a bit in the Jedi video game series, as you duke it out against them. So I think this is the first time that we actually see them like rip through people on, the television movie side of things.
We did see them in season 1, so before anybody comes at me,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna
we did.
acknowledge we saw them in season 1 because that's when Cassian got arrested.
Yeah, but they were more like security droids, like
It it wasn't anything like what we
profiling.
saw in this episode.
Yeah.
The one kicked that barricade clear across the park area, and it was just like it was a little Lego to him.
Yeah, I mean they're throwing people so hard it's basically snapping their backs and snapping their necks and they're just dying on impact.
Yep.
So it's really showing the strength of these droids.
Yeah. One of the rebel teammates, I'll call him because I don't really know his name, but he runs a vehicle into the K2 unit that's about to take Cassian out and rips it in half, and that's how Cassian eventually takes it back with him. And in the following episode, uh, just kind of jumping ahead a little bit, just to stay in this one little story piece. In the following episode is when we see them finally resurrect this K2 unit. So this is the beginning of K2SO. I'm excited. I'm here for it. This is what I've been waiting for the whole time.
Well, you'll be satisfied with the next three episodes. Um, I'm kind of curious because, when we see K2 in the Rogue One film, he's got a sense of humor. And so it makes me wonder, is he going to develop it? Because, Cassian's kind of a sarcastic meanie to him, or is it in his programming to be more sarcastic? I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see if they expand on that a little bit. Uh, but yeah, we got episode three as well to cover. So, the incident happened on Gorman, so now it's reaching the ears of the Senate. And so, somebody's gonna be talking about this instance. So, the majority of what we get here is a lot of exposition, and then
Who,
there's a
who
fairly
can you
big moment.
trust?
Huh?
Who can you trust?
Nobody.
Nobody. But you
Yeah.
gotta trust somebody.
Well, Mothma only really trusts Luthen and whoever Luthen tells her to, because we get quite a scene with the two of them.
But at the same time, she keeps telling Luthen, I'm at a point now where I'm scared of you because I don't want to become like my friend Tay,
Right.
who's just gone because he was too risky, too much of a liability. And she's doing something that she knows Luthen doesn't like.
Yeah, that's because Luthen, he wants this thing to succeed and he doesn't care. Well, from my opinion, he doesn't care who dies in the process. And so I think you're right with how she kind of sees herself potentially falling into that mindset of his, where where he wouldn't care if she was killed at some point. And so, she's trying to find a way to not get out of it, but maybe get away from that sector of the drama that's going on, because the majority of this episode is leading up to this big speech that Mothma gives at the Senate, where she's talking about, what happened on Gorman, and the big monster that's coming after everybody is Emperor Palpatine. Which I know the director and or the writer has said that Vader and Palpatine would not make an appearance in the show. I do think it would have been interesting to kind of see his reaction to what she said,
That
even
would
if
have so elevated it.
it was just I think he probably would have done his iconic chuckle. Um, I would butcher it, so I'm not going to do it, but it's kind of like a crackly laugh that he has. But she's told by Luthen that her basically the person to get her out of there is going to be somebody that mentions that, what is it? I have a lot of friends or whatever it was.
I have friends everywhere. That's the code rebel
Yeah.
term that they've been using throughout the season. But before we get to her escape, I just want to comment on another reason for her to not trust Luthen right now is that earlier in the episode, she found out that her assistant at her job, at her work, has been working for Luthen behind her back. So, like, working for her at work, but working for Luthen at the same time as, like, an extra security to protect Mon. But like she didn't know that he was also working for Luthen. So not only has this guy been lying to her, but Luthen hired somebody else to kind of spy on Mon Month at the same time. So it's just another reason for her to not trust anybody, especially Luthen.
Well, they found a bug in the office.
Yes, that just that doesn't help either.
Yeah, so when they found it, they took it off the underneath the desk and they smashed it.
I didn't
So
catch how they knew that there was one there in the beginning. Like they knew that there was one there for some reason, and they went looking for it and they found it. But how did they know it was there at all?
I don't recall. I just know they were using this little gun thing that was making interesting light things, and then when it turned red, it was like, oh, it's there. It's like a stud finder.
That's what I was thinking too. But yeah, Bail Organa helps her deliver this speech by giving her the floor because she wasn't supposed to be on the agenda for the meeting. And the Imperials are trying to, did I say that right? Yeah, they're trying to cut her off her feed so that the galaxy can't hear what she's saying because if you're gonna control, you gotta control the media if you want control of the population. But they don't buzz her out in time before she says Palpatine's name. So she gets out her word.
Yep. And so once she gets out, that's when she runs into Cassian, and she's basically saying, like, I don't have time for this. And that's when he tells her the little secret code, and they make their way. Well, they're on their way out, and there is a female character that is trying to stop them. And we see her earlier in the episode too, being a kind of a bad guy. And Andor takes care of her, pops her in the head, and they continue on. They run into the driver that that Mon Mothma has, and I think she like whispers to him, he's with the Imperials, and so Cassian says something to him that would kind of trigger of, whether the guy is what Mothma said, and he kind of falls for that trick a little bit, and so that's when Andor pops him too, and then they get into the vehicle and speed away, which this leads to Mothma being a part of the rebellion now on Yavin. So she's away from Coruscant, she's away from Palpatine and the heavy Imperial presence, and she is now on the rebel base, which the Empire does not know where that is. Remember in episode 4, they capture Leia and they say, where is the rebel base? And she lies about it. And then they eventually find out where it is because of Luke, Han, and Chewie and all them with a tracking device. So, needless to say, where she's going, she is safe for now and the rest of the season.
Yep. We also see Wilman and his girlfriend or girlfriend, however you want to say it. They are, I'm gonna say, relatively safe. He's wounded and he needs to see a doctor, but he's alive. He's doing fine. He'll make it. And she seems fine. And I think oh we see Luthen's shopkeeper, and so she's good. She made it out. She said that Luthen made it out too, but he's not there. He went elsewhere. And I think the only thing we have left story-wise for this little arc series is Bix and what's going on with her in this last episode.
Yeah, honestly, I thought leading up to this episode that with her struggles, with her trauma, I thought Star Wars was gonna, eventually lead to a suicide story here with her struggle with mental health. And I personally feel like they didn't exactly tell us what's going on. It might be up to interpretation, but she basically tells Andor like, "Yo, I gotta leave. I can't be here anymore." Uh, and so, he gets that note. He believes that she got on the transport that morning and he slept through that. And so, she's gone. And so I I think they're insinuating that she got on that transport and left and, is gonna go do her own thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of, mental health, suicide awareness message going on here.
I feel like it's tied more to her spiritual connection to the healer from the first episode of this arc,
Mm.
and that she had asked what is Cassian, and Bix said that he's a pilot, but the lady could tell that he was more than just a pilot and more important. And I think that Bix, in my I, she's struggled a lot with her mental health, and I won't deny that. She's been through a lot. She's got a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage. But I think she sees it as I can't find a way to be strong enough to support him with him. So I'm gonna support him by leaving him. And just he wants so badly to get out of this rebel life because he wants to just settle down with her. But she, I think, based on a conversation with Val, sees that as being too selfish, and that, he's more important than just settling down with her because he's a natural leader for this new military group, the rebellion group, and that he needs to keep doing that work. And if she stays, he's gonna leave it. And I think she's trying to do the strongest thing that she can do because she can't support him while he's gone, so she's just gonna leave. Which is really sad because she doesn't even leave by talking to him face to face, just leaves him that video chat note. Like, how sad.
Yeah, no kidding. Not my favorite way to do that, but I don't know.
I
It adds more and more to Andor's distrust, I think. Because once we get to Rogue One, he's all about business. Like, here's the mission, you do as I say, and honestly, his trust level is very low until, Jen starts putting her finger back in his face. But um, I think it's part of the character development for Andor.
we all knew that she had to go at some point because she's not in
Hmm.
Rogue One, but at the same time, I really wish they would have gone the route of she regained her strength and was on missions with him because she said, I'm going on the next mission with you. And I know that she went and did the one to like re-torture the torture doctor, or uh, however you want to describe that scene. Like she went and did that attack with him, but I wish she would have like rejoined the forces and tried to fight more alongside him and maybe use that to battle against her addiction to those sleeping pills or something a little more heroic than just I'm gonna leave you and maybe die in battle or something that just I don't know. I feel like it would have been more meaningful to us as the audience than just her just leaving.
I would agree, but I also think it means more from a writing perspective to depict why Andor is the way he is um, in Rogue One.
Yeah,
Because we,
I I guess it would have been like a repeat of what happened to Vel, so maybe that would have been a little bland because it had just happened to her, but I feel like their relationship meant more than Vel's did.
yeah, I would agree. Anything else from this arc?
I feel like that about wraps it up. I mean, the story ends with him, uh redoing that K2 unit, but we already touched on that, so I think we touched on all the bases.
All right, well, that was our discussion for episode 7 through 9. This is the third arc of the series, and we got one more tonight. So we will go ahead and check that out. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back to all of you on our thoughts for the season finale and the series as a whole. So if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, when that final video comes out for these episodes, you can come back here and check us out. Drops a like if you liked the video and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the third arc, episodes 7 through 9. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.